So welcome everyone to the Retail and Consumer Goods Tableau user group. If you couldn't read it, it's right there on your screen. And let's go to the next slide. And so today what we're going to do is we've got some quick updates for you. And then obviously everybody's not here for that initial welcome slide. Everybody's here to actually learn a couple things and have some good conversation. So we want to leave as much time as possible for Amanda and Steve, and then whatever time we have left, I've pulled together some quick tips and tricks using a dashboard I created this week. We can walk through that as well. And so that's kind of the agenda for the week. And so here's us. So if you ever have any questions, this is the team to reach out to. More than happy to help on anything that is going on. And Blake, I see an issue here. I'll let you
slightly outdated slide
after the fact. So for those in the note, Blake actually left HEB and is at Apple at this point. Okay, so a couple of things. So two things, just so one of the things that's important as we think about how do we get involved and how do we connect more in the future. So we spun up a LinkedIn group for Retail Tug announcements. Think about this as a place for you to stay in the know on all things Retail Tug. Would love to see your guys' work being shared in that space. It's a great opportunity for us to connect there. So scan there to join. The other thing that we've done is we've spun up a Medium publication. So Blake and I and Ojo, you've done some as well. We've done some writing on Medium, and this is a great way to brush off those skills, teach those around us on all things Tableau, and so the open invitation for everyone in our community to do some writing on what you're learning in Tableau, and feel free to share it to that publication. We'd love to see you guys contribute and whatnot there. So you can also follow it as we get new content. That'll be a space for you to engage. Okay. So those are the couple of things. The other thing that we wanted to let you know. So this is a relatively new group. We've been at it for about 12 months. We've got 350 members, and we've had about 8 meetings. So you guys are all part of the history-making trajectory. Lots of good stuff. Excited to see where things continue to evolve over time. Okay. And with that, we'll pass it over to Amanda and Steve. My understanding is you've wrote a book recently, or co-wrote a book recently on dashboards. And you've done some of that in the past. You're also doing a lot of work with Chart Chat, and I see Steve. Looks like you're probably trying to find the book. I think Ojo could probably help you out as well. But excited to hear from you guys and dashboards that deliver. And so I will hand it off to you guys at this point.
I'm Amanda McCulloch. I'm one of the 4 co-authors of Dashboards That Deliver, along with my colleague Steve, who's here with me today, and our colleagues Jeff and Andy. So we're excited to be here today to chat with you about the new book, Dashboards That Deliver. Thanks to Ojo, Steve, everyone for their lovely copies that they can show you. It's a great book that is rooted in the idea that the world needed another book about dashboards, but perhaps focused a bit more on the process of building and designing dashboards, not just the front-end design decisions that we make. The book was actually written as originally conceptualized in parts of a conversation about having a follow-up to the famed Big Book of Dashboards that I'm guessing many of you have a copy of. And Steve, I don't know if you want to say anything about the kind of evolution and the ways in which Dashboards That Deliver got started and its connection back to the Big Book of Dashboards.
Oh, sure. Happy to do so. Jeff Schaefer, Andy Cockreeve, and I had a discussion of do we need a second edition of the Big Book of Dashboards? Is this thing old? Is it dated? Is there problems with it? And Amanda knows. I'll look at things and go, I could do that a little better now. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but here's a better way to present it. And I got to vet that in the makeover episode we did of Chart Chat last month. But for the most part, the book just wasn't broken. There isn't a big problem with it. And um, Amanda brought up the idea of, well, here's the thing that I'm frustrated by and feel that there's a need for and hasn't been addressed yet, which is, yeah, if you have this data, here's what you should make. But how do you go about making it? And how do you make sure people actually adopt it and use it? And has it been optimized for their use? Have you really heard what your stakeholders need? And she championed creating a framework for it. So for certain, we have some great scenarios and we want you to steal from them liberally. But the foundation of it is based on a framework that helps guide you into, if you're going to do this thing and put time and effort into it, don't you want to succeed? Here are things you can try or do that are more likely to lead you to success. And then the discussion was, well, do the three of us well, we already decided, no, if we're not redoing the first book, we're going to do another book. It should be all four people that are in charge at. So that's my recollection of it.
2 years later, there we were with the book. More than 2 years later, perhaps. So yeah, I'm excited with where we landed with Dashboards That Deliver, and I'll give a bit more context on kind of my background in a minute and give Steve a chance to give a bit more context on his and how our work has touched into the world of topics related to the retail sector. But for the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to break things down into two different parts. So we will go ahead and we will first talk about the overview of our framework for data visualization, design, and dashboard design, an iterative cyclical framework that you can beg, borrow, and steal from all you like. And then Steve will dive into one of our scenarios that was selected by Ojo as one of the leaders for this group as one that was particularly relevant to the retail community, because we think that it's important to see your own work represented in these kind of books because it makes the topics more real. As I mentioned, we've got 4 co-authors for the book. Andy, Jeff are not here today, but are both wonderful collaborators. Andy is the now founder of a company, How to Speak Data, independent now after almost 15 years at Tableau and as a Tableau evangelist. And Jeff is a professor of analytics at the University of Cincinnati, running the Applied AI Lab. I'm Amanda McCulloch. I'm a data viz designer based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm also a founding board member of the Global Data Visualization Society, where I served as executive director for 4 years. While my roots are in public health, and most of my work is in public health, two of my kind of dotted lines back to the worlds that you all occupy are that in the world of public health, I spent a lot of time working on data visualizations and analytics around healthcare logistics, and specifically vaccines and other medical commodities and how they move from point A to point B and how we account for where they are. So there's a lot of logistics that are part of, sorry, that pop forward. There's a lot of logistics that are part of anything related to retail and commerce. The second piece is that I actually spent 1.5 years leading a CX analytics team at Marriott International headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland, where I led a team of 10 different dashboard developers, building out Tableau dashboards on everything from tools for our digital teams, looking at conversion on how people who came to the website converted to buying hotel rooms, to guest satisfaction scores. And so in the retail space, I spent a little bit of time working there in hospitality, which was interesting. Steve, do you want to give your own short bio blurb and who you are and your connections or work with retail customers?
I'm Steve Wexler. I'm the founder, principal, and chief chart looker at Data Revelations. Within the Tableau sphere, I'm probably best known as being the survey data fellow and visualizing survey data with Tableau. And I think another claim to fame is I have probably failed more than anybody in this gathering. And I figured out why a lot of the things have failed and tried to distill that into the book so you don't fail. Within the retail sphere, gosh, I don't know. Certainly Amazon comes to mind. I don't know if, would you say ADP? No, not really. I'd have to look at the list. It's a copious list. There are an F ton of retailers there. But we're going to show something that is retail-y, but I will say if you skip the other scenarios, you will be missing things that could help you in your retail work, and we'll get to that later.
Agreed. Well, so let's dive into kind of where our thinking about the world of data visualization and dashboards today is, at least for me, and into the framework itself. So to level set, to make sure we're all speaking the same language, for the purpose of today's talk, we're going to call a dashboard any visual display of data used to monitor conditions and or facilitate understanding. This was the definition used in the Big Book of Dashboards, and if something isn't broke, let's not try to fix it. We did talk about if the definition still held today and determined that it did, so we pulled it forward as part of our framework for dashboards that deliver. Andy actually made the argument that even 3 automated Slack emojis every single morning could be a dashboard by this definition. That kind of dashboard didn't quite make it into the book, but I do love how extensible this definition is in terms of thinking about what a dashboard is. So I'm probably on the receiving end of some very poor targeted marketing. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe others are not seeing these ads popping up all over your Instagram feed. But ThoughtSpot really wants to convince me that dashboards are dead. And that's probably not a great pitch to make to someone who just co-wrote a book about dashboard design. But my beef with ThoughtSpot and their marketing campaign, because I think dashboards are dead, points more to the fact that dashboards in some ways have failed in various different spaces and circumstances, is that they tell us that dashboards have failed to deliver on the promise of a data-driven culture. And especially in my world of public health, and more broadly in the world of how data gets used within organizations, it's not tools and technology that go ahead and solve the challenge of getting people to engage with and use data more. Culture is created by people, as well as processes and systems, but really is created and anchored on people. And so I don't love this idea that dashboards should be the one-size-fits-all solution to building a data-driven culture. I don't think that's a promise that ever really should have been made. Now, Zach Bowders has said that if dashboards are dead, why do we use them every day? On our wrists, in our cars, etc. And I think he highlights the fact that a lot of dashboards have been shrunken down and made more simple and more accessible in the tools and spaces where we access them. And we are realistically accessing and engaging with data more than ever before. The COVID-19 pandemic was an exceptional example of where many of us were looking at lots of data and dashboards on a regular basis. One of those dashboards is actually a featured scenario in the book with the story of how the Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard was built. And there are plenty of people opining about the ways in which AI specifically is going to kill the dashboard. Dashboards are dead, why dashboards are dead, what it really means for analytics. And you can opine all you want about the ways in which AI and AI embedded within tools is changing how we build dashboards. But I think we have a long way to go and a lot of data governance work to do to actually have better AI-enabled dashboards and analytic tools. Now, there are certain ways in which it's very exciting that we can use more natural language prompting and ways that we can engage more natively with these tools, perhaps making data and information more widely accessible across business customers and enable people to ask questions of their data in ways that feel more natural to them. But I don't think that the role of the dashboard developer and designer is going anywhere. And I think that having a key framework for thinking about dashboard design can help us better collaborate and communicate with our colleagues, our clients, and our users. So we gave a poll early on in our process of working on this book. I think it was in the first year when we were doing our initial user research, asking folks, how much do you agree with the statement that most dashboards fail? And the options for responses were strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly disagree. I always say Likert, but I think it's Likert. I'm terrible at remembering the correct pronunciation of the scale there. Steve, which is it? Remind me.
It's Likert.
Likert, there we go. It was a Likert scale response. And we went ahead and we polled over 460 different dashboard creators around what their sentiment was on how much they agree with the statement, most dashboards fail. Now, we found that 71% of people surveyed agreed that most dashboards fail, giving a response of either strongly agree or agree. And when we're surveying people who are creating or engaged with dashboards in different ways, these are people with a vested interest in these tools succeeding. So that begs the question of, why do dashboards fail? And what do we mean by failure? Is a dashboard that doesn't get developed all the way through to going live because we realize there's no real good reason to have it out there in the world a failure, or a success because we stopped sinking time and money and resources into a tool that wouldn't get used? Now, I think that many dashboards fail because they skip the conversations that inform the design and they dive right into development. In our iterative framework for dashboard development, we have 3 different phases that happen before you ever get to developing the dashboard within your tool of choice: the Spark, discovery, and prototyping, which all create spaces, not just to gather information from our end users, but actually to show examples and have conversations with them so they feel like vested partners in the design process. Now, I blame this a little bit on the tools themselves. So Microsoft, Tableau, Click, others all like to promise that doing these kind of things, getting started, is easy. Anyone can see and understand their data. Share with a click. Turn your data into automated AI-driven actions. But when we think about all of these promises made in marketing land, I don't know that those always transition over into what actually happens when you're connecting these tools to real world, big, massive, complex data sets, especially across organizations where the same metric and the same words might mean different things across different business units. And so as we think about what that means and what failure is, we should also think about success. And these tools enable us to build things quickly, but speed to launch isn't the real measure of dashboard success in most cases. Now, you may be working within different time bounds and constraints that you need to consider for how quickly a dashboard needs to be available. If there's a new campaign launching and you want to have real-time feedback and analytics, there'll be a time box to when that dashboard needs to go live. But instead of thinking of that speed to launch and speed of development as the one most important piece, we thought about 2 different kinds of success when we were framing out the book. The first is little s success, and these are the things we can count. They are typically directionally useful, and they include many of the common indicators we look at, especially in Tableau and Tableau server environments, like monthly active users, page views, maybe even quantifying the hours saved in the manual analysis process. If a dashboard is replacing a series of spreadsheet steps or data cleaning exercises that have to happen each quarter or each month or each week, we can quantify those numbers in meaningful ways. But dashboards really need to also have a big S success measure, where we measure the organizational impact from a dashboard. These are those stories and qualitative insights that actually show a dashboard being used to make decisions or informing a strategy, or making work more effective or efficient in some way, shape, or form. And it's important that we consider how we collect that information and plan for that from the start. And that starts with defining what success looks like and why this dashboard needs to exist in the world. So let's talk a bit more about the framework for dashboard design and development that we've created as part of Dashboards That Deliver, and where that starts out. Now, frameworks are valuable because they give us a shared language and set of tools for data teams to use. And not just for data teams to use internally, but also to use with their clients, their different internal users of their dashboards, their different business customers, to ensure that everyone has a shared language and understanding around what goes into building an effective dashboard. Oftentimes, those things that are such simple, elegant, easy to use user interfaces take the most time. Now, in our framework, we start with the point where we need to have a key spark for why a dashboard needs to exist. So starting with that spark and saying, what is the reason that this dashboard exists in our organization or in the world, which should go beyond checking the box that it is a requirement or item on one of our kind of quarterly lists of goals that we have. There should be a business reason for why this dashboard needs to exist, which drives the purpose and the vision and a lot of other design decisions around what we'll build. In building out this framework, we've brought together 2 different kind of worlds of facilitation tools and tools for managing, building software, doing software development and data products in the form of insights from agile software development and user-centered design. And in bringing different tools together from those different spaces and thinking about them through the lens of data and dashboards, we're able to bring together some of the best pieces of those different sides of the coin to go ahead and build more effective data tools. Thinking about data tools and dashboards kind of like an analytical product. This includes thinking about ways in which we might better map out and create that framework and timeline with our users for when different pieces of the dashboard will be developed and available to them. And really spending time breaking down the things that seem like one big task that might be one line in a work plan, like define user requirements, and breaking them down more granularly. Similarly to having a framework that gives us a shared language between the data teams and the additional people who are using the dashboard and part of the conversations for planning and executing and eventually launching that dashboard. Breaking down one big thing like define user requirements into more specific items also gives added visibility to people outside the data team around the work that goes into building a great dashboard. Now, we need that spark at the very beginning, that reason the dashboard's being developed. And then we need to think about the ways in which we spend time understanding our users' needs. You'll see as you start to move through the framework diagram, there are arrows that highlight the ways in which each of these different steps in the cycle could take different amounts of time and be iterative in themselves. The discovery phase, the first of the heads down phases of working with different users to understand their needs, is framed out as part of 2 different diamonds. And this is harkening back to the British Design Council's Double Diamond Framework. The Double Diamond Framework focuses on first making sure we're actually spending time defining the problem that we need to solve with whatever it is we're building. That could extend beyond dashboards, but for our purpose, we're talking about dashboards here. This is where we brainstorm and gather many insights from our users, and then we narrow in and focus on defining the primary requirements. There will always be more things that someone wants a dashboard to do than is feasible within the time bounds of what we can deliver. Here, we're working on going beyond what and understanding why and how someone will actually use your dashboard. And in doing that, we offer up 5 different discovery techniques that all include different artifacts you can show back to users and get their feedback on to make sure you have a shared understanding of what their needs are. One of my favorite are the simple user stories. This is framing out the different core requirements of a dashboard for a given group with, as a stakeholder name, some kind of person. I need some kind of information in order to do something. And the do something part there is really important and often will inform the actual chart design decisions we make. Let's look at a specific example. We're harkening back now to my time working more on healthcare logistics, but you can imagine and extend this out to other different sectors. So as a regional manager, I need to understand if a district in my region is having persistent stockouts of key vaccines in order to identify if stockouts are a regional issue or reallocating supplies could address different gaps. Now I can look for some key words in that sentence, a district, my region, persistent stockouts, reallocating supplies, that give me insights as to what kind of information and then charts my user might need. If I see that I need to look at data from a district, this tells me that views need to drill down to a district level, not just look at big national aggregations. Seeing my region says I need to personalize that dashboard and filter to view one region at a time. Persistent tells me I need some kind of trend over time to see if an issue is persistent or not. And stockouts or vaccine stockouts show me that that's the key metric they're focused on, which may also raise the question of what additional metrics would I need to see to better understand trends and patterns in vaccine stockouts. And seeing that reallocating supplies as a core goal tells me that a trend of what's happening in one place might not be enough. I may need to see information geographically around where additional vaccine supply stocks might be that I could reallocate and move between different healthcare facilities. This means that a map might actually be very practical here analytically, not just something that looks nice on a dashboard. Then once we've actually defined all of the different requirements for our dashboard and spent time crafting those user stories, as well as personas and other ways of understanding user needs, and started to explore the data, we need to create some rapid prototypes for quick feedback instead of just skipping, again, right into development. Now, you can do rapid prototyping within Tableau if you have a sample data set or data structure you can work with. And some people find that very helpful. I've always found that when I'm prototyping, I like to use forms that give me a little bit more flexibility than having to have the data completely honed or at least shaped in terms of what it looks like. And this is because prototyping is the space where we want to ideate and brainstorm many visual ideas for what we might create to communicate this information and build this analytical tool. And then think about how we consolidate charts into some kind of validated mockup. This is where we shift over from defining the problem we're solving, the data need that people have, over to building the right thing. And key in this process is that we are actively showing prototypes and maybe A/B testing chart types with our users, not just going into a black box of design and development and sketching out ideas and blazing forward, but instead thinking about the ways in which we go ahead and we validate with our users what they want to see. This is an additional way to give them that shared ownership and be part of the design process and talk about why maybe a typical chart type they're used to seeing, like a paired column chart, might not work as well as, say, a dumbbell chart or a comet chart for the analytical need that they have. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. So as we think about what this looks like and the value of rapid prototyping, we can zoom out and think about a different kind of design challenge we might have. Say you're building a new mode of transportation to get someone from point A to point B. And one way that you could go ahead and you could build out and give someone a way to get from point A to point B is to say, I'm going to build you a car. And to build the car, we have to build the component parts of the car, the wheels plus axle, the chassis, put it all together. And eventually, weeks or months or years later, you have a vehicle, you have a car. Now, you hope that you were aligned on what the vision was for what that car is going to look like. And I didn't build you a massive SUV when you wanted a zippy sports car. But you also have the challenge that there's no opportunity for someone to really interact with or use the parts of this vehicle to go from point A to point B along the process. They only see the final finished product. Instead, we could think about rapid prototyping as building simpler ways, lower fidelity ways to get from point A to point B. A skateboard, a bike, a motorcycle, eventually a car, where we might get feedback on the route someone's taking or what they like or don't like about different ways of making that commute. And this translates over to the world of dashboards as we think about starting with the lower fidelity representations of our data, the wireframes, the static images, the things that are super simple and give me an overall schematic and flow of what will be on my dashboard. Then moving over into a static mockup that has additional charts and graphs in it, and finally into some kind of static or even interactive prototype that might not have real data underneath it, but allows me to interact with and understand how I might use that tool. Each of those moments are opportunities for us to go ahead and get feedback and to use the insights from those feedback sessions as anchors to go back to and make sure what we develop is meeting those different needs. One of my favorite chapters in the book is from the Children's Hospital Association, where the process of doing that work up front eventually informed decisions to build an entirely new opening executive page called their Key Opportunities page that was specifically around the needs of high-level, time-limited executive users that wouldn't have come to be if it hadn't been for that early stage research. Now, sometimes these prototypes can be as simple as a sketch, and showing someone a sketch is valuable because it can give them an opportunity to say, I know you haven't invested a ton of time in this yet, so I'm more willing to give you really specific feedback. And you can see here examples from our chapters on the Splash dashboard for a water and sanitation nonprofit, and from the Economist's Big Mac Index around how the final different dashboards actually were rooted in sketches from the start. Then once you have these sketches and you've gotten some feedback and you've started to refine your different dashboard components, you can create the digital mockup that a user can review, the prototype that someone can engage with and interact with, which sends you then into the work of doing the actual development of the dashboard, where you actually have the data work also done in the back end to allow you to go ahead and start to build out the real dashboard with the real data and see how your design concepts translate into real world visualizations. Now, we dive into the book a lot around the importance of doing appropriate planning and having a purposeful approach to releasing and launching the dashboard, including engaging and having champions who help to get others to use the dashboard and promote adoption, and ways to capture feedback in a real-time basis, such that you can actually look at all of the feedback together and then batch and implement groups of enhancements to your dashboard. It's always the case that we get more feedback than we can usually act on if a dashboard is being widely used. And there may be times when feedback is competing with each other or in conflict. And taking the time to look at requests as a batch and then making a plan and then implementing that development loop again can be really valuable. And also avoid some of the context switching that can happen if it feels like your dashboard developers are back in the weeds of making some kind of change every day or every week, which each time also offers up the opportunity for human error and creating other issues and new issues and challenges in your dashboard. The process of building a dashboard can look really different depending on what your current circumstances are, your constraints. And I jokingly kind of doodle and sketch the ways in which you can get stuck in development loops or spend a lot of time in discovery or spend a lot of time prototyping. But what we did find as we did our research for this book and framed out our 15 different scenarios is that each of these different scenarios and dashboard examples had its own very unique process. But across the board, many of them spoke to the success that happened from actively engaging with users, getting feedback over time, and implementing some of the different design best practices that we've come to find really valuable to also instill in the book. There's a whole chapter just on dashboard designs and layouts that help to summarize and synthesize some of the key learning that we've seen both from our scenarios and research and from other different books and research that's out there. So with that, I want to hand it over to Steve to talk about the e-commerce dashboard. And the thing that this dashboard always makes me think about is the way dashboards evolve and they change in response to different feedback from different folks. So Steve, I'll hand over the screen sharing to you to talk a bit about the e-commerce dashboard. And then I've got some slides to wrap us up at the end.
Great. Just a few things that I want to comment on that people may be thinking about or go, well, that's a fair point. I think choosing this dashboard makes complete sense to me, as I think you'll see a lot of yourselves in it, but don't give short shrift to the other dashboards. I'm going to allude briefly to the so-called the bowling coach dashboard. There's stuff that you're going to pick up from these other things. The other thing is, and underscoring that is, I kind of lobbied not to include one of the dashboards in the book, the NASA Hyperwall, for the very reason that Amanda says, well, are people going to see themselves in this? How many people are making a 30-foot wide hyperwall? But there's enough important stuff in there that you can apply to your work, your needs, your pressures, that I think you'll find valuable. Other thing that I wouldn't say I disagree with, but for certain, you don't want to spend hours and hours or days developing something without going through, gee, do my users need this? Are they going to adopt it? Are they going to like it? But I will sometimes do a quick and dirty dashboard, and it acts as a spark for something that I'll connect to data. I'll discover something that no one has seen. I'll create some functionality in it that's pretty cool, and then show it, and they'll go, oh my God, let's delve into this. So for me, the beauty of Tableau is it allows mere mortals to connect to data and find something cool and share it with other people. So that can be the spark. Just don't spend a month on that thing.
Or don't feel like that has to be the final dashboard. I've gotten stuck where someone says, oh, that looks great, I love it, can we push it? And I'm like, no, that was a sample data set that I've got that's like a subset snapshot of one little piece of it that I used to build this out. So I think there are ways in which certainly the prototyping piece at every phase, anytime you can give something visual to someone to look at, I think there's value, because I think you get better, more concrete feedback.
Visual to look at. That gets to my next point, which is AI killing the dashboard. So a friend of mine is quite the coder and quite the data visualization enthusiast. His daughter is a senior software engineer at Spotify, and they both looked at the book and the coaching dashboard and said, well, I can just use AI and it will tell me who I should be playing and when. I said, yes. Will the coach trust this system? But also the coach has to deal with the student, with the kids, has to deal with the parents, and they need to see something, not just an answer that says, oh, you should be playing this person and that person. But a lot of times you're going to need the artifacts from these dashboards to help you make your case, make your argument, and get people to go, you know what, now I see it, which, by the way, is the name of one of Stephen Few's books. Okay, with that in mind, let me share. So this is the e-commerce dashboard from brilliant Tableau practitioner Dorian Benetoy out of Romania. I think he just does such fantastic work. And let me focus on the top of this dashboard for a moment. and see what the components of it. We've got some bands up at the top, and then we have this interesting compound chart type. Yeah, I've got some bar and bars, and then I've got these thermometer bars. So let me just look at the color legend bands. Teal means conversion rate. So anytime you see this greenish looking hue, it means it refers to conversion rate. The pink, and Amanda, I'm just going to, hit the punchline, which is, why did they use these colors? Isn't there something associated with it? And I said, Dorian didn't know either. He said, I used these colors, they were fine with it. There's no significance to the difference in the colors. It just means greenish teal means conversion rate, and pink means the actual number of conversions. And the light gray is the number of sessions. And that becomes augmented, reflected, amplified in the charts. So gray is the number of sessions. So those gray bars means for cost per click, I had a lot of sessions this month. For email, we had a lot of sessions. For referral, over here, we had very few sessions. Okay. Next is the pink, which is the conversions. And finally, the conversion rate. And we can see for organic, we had a very high conversion rate. For referral, we had a massively high. Obviously, the highest you can get is you'd fill this thermometer or this cell, but we didn't have very many sessions. By the way, this just hits the spot I'm so often confronted with. I need to see the actual numbers, and I need to see percentages at the same time. And I think Dorian created this compound chart that's very elegant. It's why I featured it in my book, The Big Picture, and why I lobbied to include it in the dashboards that deliver as well. So let's go to another part of this, which is the middle part. And there's a whole section of this that, let me see if I can get my cool pointer working. It was giving me a hard time before. Hold on. Come on. There we go. This legend that explains how to read the chart. And if someone's looking at this thing daily, which they are, do you really need to show them, hey, you know this thing that you use daily? I'm going to tell you how to read it. Again, no, you don't. But for the sake of the book, it's nice to have this. So let me show you some cool things here. So here is how we get the conversion rate. This is the one time in my entire career, which is long, where I've seen a bar in bar chart work. The gray is the number of views. The white bar that's in here is the adding to the cart. And then the dark gray is the number of people who actually purchase the thing. And this is just the source of where our traffic is. It cost per click, organic views, or Criteo views. And we'll see some interesting things. Like over here, I can see the red dot, which means there are a lot of sessions here, but we're not getting a lot of conversions. A lot of people aren't buying things. And I just love the power of the little red dot. It's the smallest thing on the dashboard, but it immediately draws my attention. We have had a discussion of, well, is it because it's a dot or because it's red? Well, the dot draws my attention to it because I was brought up in a culture where a red means warning, danger, look out. So my attention is drawn to it, and I realize maybe there's a problem. By the way, down here, I have an amazing conversion rate, almost 50%, but there were very few sessions. So going with our framework and things that people might want to know is this thing took 1 week to make, from initial spark to when it was being used by the CEO on a regular basis. Well, part of the reason it only took 1 week was you had a brilliant developer, but you also had one clearly defined stakeholder who was engaged. Well, what was the spark for this dashboard? It was this. And by the way, this would get a screaming cat icon. This was their default Google Analytics, and it wasn't allowing the CEO, who, by the way, said, this thing's great. I want this chief operational officer and this chief marketing officer to be looking at this daily as well. But the spark was, I don't know how individual products are doing. I can't tell anything from this. It's a table full of numbers. So the spark for this dashboard was when the company CEO asked to see product performance over time so he could easily identify the best and working performing products. He needed greater detail and better insights than what the incumbent, which was Google Analytics, was showing. And as Banato recounts, the dashboard developer, I created a draft dashboard and the CEO said it was difficult to use as he had to log in. Most important, what I had built wasn't close to what he wanted. He needed something basic for each product so he could see sessions, views, and all that. There was a lot of back and forth early on. Also, the fact that he didn't want to log in said, oh, I've got to embed it inside the portal that this guy looks at every morning. So a couple of other insights. The major reason for such a fast design in this thing was that discovery was easy. And I don't want it, please do not poo-poo discovery. There was no need to determine the audience and canvas their needs. The audience was one person, and he was able to articulate what he needed and why he needed it. So that's a big reason why the thing only took 1 week. Yes, you had a very gifted developer. By the way, he said the hardest thing was just getting the data out of Google Analytics. Said it was a nightmare. And the web connector would only bring so much data in, and he had to do 4 different web connections and things like that. But the other it was a single, easily defined audience. Getting back to why I've liked the practicality of Dorian's solution, in dashboard workshops that I've given, and this is an example that was created by Jeff, he would say, here are 4 data facets, and create a dashboard that shows them. And one data facet was that north and east are below goal, and west and south are above goal. And he would say north was 95% of goal, and south was 105% of goal, and east was 65% of goal. And you need to show that. On the ball attendees would say, do they all have the same goal? Do they all have to make $1 million in sales? Or is West, no, they have to make $8 million in sale, and East only has to make 600,000. So, should I be showing the actuals? And realized, well, hold on, folks. We could be showing the actuals and the percentages at the same time. And I borrowed Dorian's approach to this. Actuals on the right, percentages on the left. And here's another example, HR, retention and attrition by role. And hey, anything above 20% is considered problematic attrition. Well, these departments are massively different sizes. How do I show how many people there are and what the rates are? And again, I just borrowed Dorian's technique for this. And it's one of the reasons I lobbied for this was this comes up a lot. You should have this technique in your back pocket. So that's what I've got on this particular example. Amanda, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. So as we go ahead and think about kind of what the learning was from this, and just because I know there was a little bit of curiosity in the chat about the world of the hyperwall, and Steve mentioned it, and I can't ever say no to sharing our NASA work. At the other end of the spectrum, from kind of typical dashboards that we think about in the world of dashboard design, like the e-commerce dashboard, we have ones in the book like Earth.gov and the NASA's hyperwall within their Earth Information Center. And I love that this kind of really embodies Alberto Cairo's principles that right now data visualizations aren't just about applying rules. They're about making justifiable choices. And when they built out the Hyperwall, it's a 20-foot long screen, very high resolution screen, with 2 different small circular screens on either end of it. And it was actually near my old house in DC. So we got to go see it in person on various occasions. And on this display, they had this overall schematic for what the display looked like. So they had their own kind of wireframe of what each of the different visualizations were going to look like within the Hyperwall. Because the Hyperwall plays a 20-ish minute, I think it's longer now, 30-ish minute loop of different kinds of content, including these different dashboards. And what I love is that they do kind of break the rules on purpose. If you look here, one of the first rules that you see broken is you see that they're bands, they're big ass numbers coined by Steve Wexler and others. Steve, I think it's you, if it's not one of the other co-authors of Big Book of Dashboards.
No. Okay. This is my big claim to fame. I came up with that acronym.
Bands. There we
Thank
go.
you.
Bands are Steve. I'm like, I think I'm attributing it to the right person, but the bands are in the lower right. And that's usually our kind of deprioritized corner on dashboards, right? But it's because the team wanted people to read the context first, because this is designed to be something that policymakers can come over from the Hill, the public can come in and take a look at, peek, and learn from the various different pieces of content that are there and this real-time data you can see about our planet, which is very cool. So it was a deliberate design decision. As it scrolls through, it will scroll through various different dashboards that display different kinds of information underneath the buckets of both Earth Now and Climate Vital Signs, where Earth Now is more real-time satellite data. Climate Vital Signs gives you more of a big picture kind of story about trends over time. But what I love is that they also incorporate video content and narration and really compelling visuals that even got my own tiny 5-year-old astronaut here curious about what was happening on a bivariate choropleth map, which was pretty exciting. And in the videos, they actually narrate and talk through and tell stories about the data, which I think helps to make it more accessible, mashed up with those kind of dashboardy views of data and information. And it was a deliberate choice by the team because Mark Subarow, who's the lead of the NASA Scientific Visualization Studio, said, I don't care if people can accurately pick a number off the graph and decode information, which is saying a lot in a book about dashboards. If people are scrolling on their phone, I'm trying to get their attention. And while this may seem like a very unique challenge to a Hyperwall that's a 20-foot long projection screen at the NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., or in a museum display or somewhere else, we are all competing for attention when we are building visual representations of data and expecting people to engage with our data visualizations and our dashboards. And so I actually don't think that this is a unique challenge just to a Hyperwall. But it is an opportunity where they've pulled in these very elegant, beautiful visuals like this rainbow color map of the ocean currents. That's just very zen to look at. It's designed to be a palette cleanser in the midst of a lot of other information. And while you may not put some kind of rainbow color palette into a business dashboard, it does make me think about the ways even seemingly simple things like how we include and incorporate white space or clear navigation or placeholder spots in our dashboard with simpler views and visualizations allows people to have that moment to breathe as they analyze and look through the data. And so in a group where we're pitching to a Tableau user group full of dashboard developers, I probably don't need to say, so what? Why does dashboard development matter? Why does this process and framework matter? Why do dashboards matter as a whole? But I think the big reason is in part because when we look at stats, 90% of business leaders have cited data literacy as key to company success. And that may even be going higher as we think about how data literacy underpins AI literacy in the current work environment. But at the same time, in the same study, only 25 workers felt confident in their data skills. And for me, dashboards and data visualizations are the way in which we can actually bridge that 90-25 gap, because they are ways that you can quickly see patterns in dense information and have that quick speed to insight. And so in doing so, we want to find ways to meet our users where they are as we design new data tools and dashboards. And that includes thinking about the ways those kind of conversations happen within groups, and dashboards get pulled up in meetings and are used as exploratory tools that go beyond just taking screenshots or saying, let's download the data to Excel. Because it's not just about building more pretty dashboards. We want to succeed because we focus on how the data actually gets used, going back to both those little s and really the big S success measures for a dashboard. So we've got a few minutes left. Happy to hand it over to Matt to do some more kind of tips and tricks. Happy to do a little bit more Q&A if you'd like. But if you're looking for more about Dashboards That Deliver, you can find more about the book on our website, dashboardsthatdeliver.com, where you can find a free download with 3 different sample chapters for the book, as well as various different free resources on the Dashboards fan club. With that, though, I will go ahead and I will pivot over to our wonderful hosts on how you'd like to use the last 6 minutes of our meeting time.
If time permits, at the very end, I have the image of the framework as some people have made some interesting historical connections with it to other things. So if I have 1 minute, let me just show you a who wore it best example. So we can do that.
You have to be careful what the overall shape of your framework looks like. People will see patterns and information you don't even think that they'll see.
I think people will be amused by this. So
I'm
why
totally.
don't we just angle that there and say you have to wait until the very end?
Yeah, I'm totally cool if we want to open it up for questions and whatnot. We can always I'm here in the retail tug all the time. We can always revisit that at a future
tips and tricks.
So I know one of the questions was about where's the best place to find it, and it looks like Amazon, right? Is that the best place to find it?
Amazon's the easy one. If you're looking to support a local bookstore, you can also find it on bookshop.org. If you go on, you can find the links to both of those sites on the main website. On the homepage, you'll see options to click on purchase from Amazon or from Bookshop. I would say that the best place to write a review, so more people find out about the amazingness that is Dashboards That Deliver, especially if you love the book, is on Amazon. You can either do a validated review if you purchase it from there, or you can still review the book even if you were gifted a copy or did not purchase it from Amazon.
Yeah, I did check earlier, and I don't know if it's targeting or not, but it did look like it was on discount on Amazon today. So.
Typically
we were very hard to ensure to do whatever we could to make sure the book you could get it for under $30. So
that was
and
the
thank
goal.
you, appreciate that. Yes, Steve, while he's looking up everything and people are typing away their questions, I just wanted to plug that I've been feverishly reading all the books that Steve has written, along with the fantastic co-authors of Andy Codgreave and Jeff. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here with us today. And then I did buy this and read it cover to cover. I'm going to come and
you're the guy who got it.
Got the whole collection there, Ojo.
Yes, I did. And there's more, but for this session, this will do. So, Steve, did you want to show something to us?
Yeah, the Andy and I both came to different reactions when we saw the just the silhouette of the framework diagram that Amanda had put together. So I'm going to ask people here. We'll do a quick, an informal poll. You can just type into chat. Oh, here you go. Who wore it best? Henry Moore.
Where we extend into the art world.
Yeah. Is it Henry Moore? Was it the Sphinx? Or is it the Dashboards That Deliver framework diagram? So Andy was just seeing Andy Moore. I saw the Sphinx. So, Randall likes the framework the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. I see the Sphinx, the top two. All right. I see those of you who lean towards art and the way you like to consume information more than beautiful, elegant frameworks with arrows and other things. I'm very
useful for their day-to-day work. Probably
Perhaps.
Not the Henry Moore or the Sphinx. I'm just guessing.
This is a fun fact. James is an art history major. I have an aunt and an uncle who are an art history professor and a studio art professor, and they are reading Dashboards That Deliver. And there's nothing more stressful than having your aunt and uncle who are professors reading your book. So I hope that you enjoy it from an art history perspective and the ways in which you see more than just standard dashboards in there.
So I see a whole bunch of known names from Next Level Tableau in the user group. And thank you, Sudha, Melissa, Louis, for joining. Pete, Timothy, if you have any questions, type them away. We still have 5 more minutes that we could spill over extra with these questions. Matt, if you have the closing notes while Matt's bringing that
And
up.
before that,
Sorry.
Ojo, I've got a quick question for Amanda and Steve. So a little fun fact from Matt and my experience at TC25 this year, but we presented on our idea to insight framework. We're big framework people over here as well.
Ooh,
And
yay.
there are tons of, I would say tons of parallels. I want to make it clear, it was before the book released, completely independent progression. But one of the biggest differences that I noticed when, reading through Dashboards That Deliver and thinking about that framework we presented is really around that, the enhancement planning piece. So I think Matt had mentioned it earlier in the chat, where we had found that oftentimes a dashboard would either be, designed to be built once and essentially left, and alternatively, it would be a tool that would evolve and be iterated upon, for months or years to come. So I guess the question that I have for the two of you is, at what point does it make sense to consider if a dashboard should just be put down and laid to rest, or continue to iterate upon it and, not let that sit and collect dust, essentially?
Well, that's fun. I
And
love this idea that a
gonna be,
dashboard is
and
something you
Amanda,
never update. Ooh, I'm struggling with
Amanda,
that.
I'll just be very short, and you can elaborate.
Okay.
Andy talks about this in Big Book of Dashboards, and that sometimes a dashboard has answered the questions it's supposed to answer, and there's nothing else to do with it, and it's time to mothball it. But I think Amanda has seen and written very eloquently about it. Oh, more questions are being asked, or more people want to use this, and this is indicates some pretty cool stuff going on. We can't just leave it in its current state, and so it dying is not necessarily a bad thing, but no. And Amanda, I'm at a loss for words, except I'm hearing Andy saying it depends.
It depends. I mean, I think I tend to think that language we use matters a lot. And I hate to say a dashboard died or should die. Sometimes we sunset dashboards, right? We take them over the horizon, we sunset them, we find that they don't serve a purpose. And some have a natural endpoint, right? So let's take, for example, if you're running a new either out-of-home campaign or a digital campaign that's very targeted and specific and time-bound, you might spin up a dashboard to track the success of that campaign on conversion or sales or something else over that 4 or 8-week period or longer. You may also think about how do you take that dashboard that kind of as a starting place for then templatizing, how you spin up dashboards more quickly and reuse it for future campaigns. And that could be with new workbooks. That could also be creating structure within your workbook that you actually can segment by a campaign ID, which campaign you're looking at, because the metrics and the visualizations and the access should be the same. And so I think that there are ways in which we can certainly decide to sunset dashboards. I think it's really good practice to audit and look at your dashboards on a recurrent basis, depending on how frequently they're used or refreshed. That could be quarterly, biannually, once a year, where especially if you have access to usage information, you can go look at and say, these dashboards aren't being used at all, and they're just taking up space. Now, I would never delete something fully, push it over to an archive space and save copies of it in case someone surfaces who wants it later. But I do think that a big part of recognizing what success looks like is seeing where a dashboard has served its purpose and is done, and that's okay. I don't think we should feel as kind of deeply emotionally attached to our dashboard staying in production for forever. I think there's a different question that is raised by that, which is, has the dashboard design itself become something that is not useful anymore? But we still have a need for a dashboard that serves a similar purpose. So say you're doing you have a dashboard that's looking at overall kind of monthly KPIs for a company, but the KPIs have transitioned or shifted or changed, or different kind of goals have been set. you may need to redesign that dashboard because the old KPI report is no longer relevant. And that may require going back and redesigning a new dashboard instead of updating and refreshing the old one. But I think we always want to consider what the time and effort and money that goes into building a brand new dashboard is versus refreshing an old one. Sometimes building new is actually faster and simpler because you're not burdened with all the tech debt of the previous one. Sometimes it's helpful to go ahead and use something as a jumping off point. So all around to say, Steve, I agree. I think it depends.
Well, Andy, he's refined this a little bit in that if you don't, it's not necessarily, yes, this thing should be sunsetted. It's that if you don't tend to it, it will become a dead end dashboard. So just to briefly, congratulations, building an effective dashboard is a difficult thing to do, and you've done it. But if you think your work is done, think again, you're just getting started. Dashboard projects do not have endings. Your businesses evolve over time, and your dashboards should do the same. If not, they run the risk of becoming dead-end dashboards.
Dead-end dashboard is a different framing, I feel like, than dead dashboards that are no longer used.
Well, I'm glad I went to the source.
Love it.
I didn't mean death. I'm team dead end or sunset at this point for sure.
No. This is good stuff that you're bringing up.
I think it's a great conversation to have. And it relates back to that broader framework question, right? That's why we talk about enhancement planning and managing and maintaining and promoting adoption of dashboards beyond just pressing the button where you publish it. That all those things are important touch points, and you should be revisiting feedback and figuring out what you need to update or change to be relevant. It's important.
Absolutely. Do Matt or Ojo, do you know if there was any other questions in the chat that we missed? I'm just skimming it now.
I didn't see any, and we are slightly over time, so I would let Matt do the closing. And while he's talking about that, Ankur is in the house, and he reached out. We spoke. This is on record that come January, there's going to be a food and beverage focused retail tug, which ties really nicely with the Iron Viz theme of this year. So I'm really stoked. And on the screen is the QR code that if you're here, snag it now, scan and RSVP so that you don't miss it. I'm going to request everyone here to spread the word around because we are trying to make Retail Tug a very inclusive and a very dynamic community that thrives. And we need your help and support to make that happen. Awesome. Take it over, Matt.
Yeah, I can't do it better than that. Excited to see everybody next year, and thanks Amanda and Steve for coming. It was a great session and learned a lot. So thanks everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks all. I know.